and welcome to SharePoint Power Hour. This is our weekly live show that we do to just kind of talk about SharePoint topics all around business solutions in SharePoint. I got my coworkers from Rackspace here with me. I'm Laura Rogers, and what are business solutions? So business solutions are things that we can do that don't involve writing code or doing PowerShell or anything in central administration on the server. So it's pretty much, there's a lot of topics that we cover, and this is going to be our, I think, 39th episode. We do this again every week at 11 Central, streaming live, and you guys can ask questions as we go. Today, Joelle is going to be doing a presentation, and I'll go, Joelle and Tavis, I'll let you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves.
All right, Tavis, you
I guess I'll go since Joelle's. Yeah. My name is Tavis Lovell. I am the BI dev on the business solutions team for Rackspace, so I deal with pretty much all things reporting and dashboarding.
Awesome. I am Joelle Farley. I am actually on our custom development team, but I have a lot of experience with business solutions. So today I'm going to be talking about content types. So I do a lot with things like what we consider planning and design, so kind of figuring out how to use all the SharePoint features before you actually roll out SharePoint. I do a lot of stuff with that, so that'll kind of be a bit of discussion today. And Laura, I didn't know if you wanted to introduce yourself or you wanted to just me to go right into the presentation.
I kind of did. I'm good.
Okay. All right. Well, then I'll just go right into the presentation. Let me go ahead and share my screen, and we'll get started. Oh, and as always, guys, if there's questions, feel free to ask them in the Q&A feature, and I'll be looking, and I'm sure some people on my team will be looking as well for those questions, so we can go ahead and get those answered for you as we go along. All right, so give me 1 second to get my screen up here. You guys should see a PowerPoint, hopefully. If not, just let me know. All right, so as I said, we're going to be talking about content types today. And one of the things that I do when I talk about things like manage metadata and content types is I always go through this process of understand, manage, and use. So kind of understanding what they are, where do you manage them and kind of maintain them, and then really what can you do with them, how can you use them. So we'll go ahead and let's get started with that. So the agenda today, with those three sections. So with understand, we're gonna what are content types. So if you've not, this is going to be kind of a beginner session. So if you've been using content types quite a bit, this might be some of the stuff may be old news to you. But we're going to kind of go through and talk about them from the beginning, and then how do they work. And then under manage, we're going to talk about creating one. What does it have to do with site columns, workflows, information management policies, excuse me. And then finally, we're going to talk about use. So I'm going to actually show you two examples of me using content types, one with a document and one with just a list. So I'm going to show you that. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about rolling up information with content types. So when you actually plan, when you're doing your planning and design for your SharePoint site and you use content types and site columns and things like that, how you can use, especially in SharePoint 2013, how you can use some of the search features and stuff to really get an easy roll-up of content. So we'll go ahead and move right in. All right, so understand. All right, so understanding content types right from the beginning. This is used to organize a document, or content types are used to organize a document or item, and the metadata, workflow, and features associated with it. So one of the things you can kind of just an easy example of what content types are, if you think of the new menu that you have in lists and libraries, all of the things that are typically listed under that new menu are considered content types. So we're seeing two examples, one from, it looks like one's from Office 365 and the other's from SharePoint 2013. So we have a new, you hover over new, you have Word document, Excel workbook, PowerPoint, and OneNote, and also a folder, because folders are even considered content types. And then you have, on the other side, you hover over the new menu and you see new document, which is going to be one of your base content types that we have inside of SharePoint. So those are all examples there. Some of the additional out-of-the-box content types. So besides document, we have form, we have item. So anytime you create a custom list, the content types just by default is going to be item. And then we have announcement, task, and event. And there's tons and tons more than this, but those are some of the most common content types that you'll work with when you're first getting into SharePoint and working with the different elements. So a little bit more about a content type. A content type can have specific columns or metadata. So you can create a content type that has a specific column. Those columns typically are going to be site columns. You can even have a content type that has a specific document template. And I'm going to show you a good example of that in a little while. And then you can even have a content type that has a specific custom new edit and display forms. You can have content types that have workflows that are specific to them. Custom solutions or features can be wrapped around a content type. Information management policies, and then the document information panel, which I'm going to show you shortly. The document information panel is really just a piece for document content types, so we'll take a look at that.
And Kelsey has something unrelated, so I'm sorry, Cassie. We can. I'll go ahead and see if we can answer that at the end. I'll go ahead and look at what you're talking about.
Okay, sounds good. So understanding content types. Every content type is based on another content type. So what that means is that you have a parent and child relationship. So child content types can extend the parent by adding additional elements such as columns. And you can see kind of there's a little bit of a diagram there. So you have the base content type, which is out of the box, right? So you have this out of the box document content type. And you want to extend that and create documents for sales and for projects. So you're going to create a sales document and a project document content type. And then if you want to extend that even further, you can say under sales, now we have proposal and contract. Now under project, we have charter and status reports. So you could create content types for all of those things that are listed there. And basically what happens is when you use document as the base or the parent, then you create anything that any columns or any features that document content type has, it will go down to sales and project. And then with sales, let's say if I wanted to add some additional columns to sales, so outside of the regular columns, I wanted to add some of my own custom columns, I could do that and it wouldn't affect the top level document content type, which is the one that's kind of out of the box and used throughout the site. It's only going to affect that sales one that I've created. So it's got that kind of relationship. And you'll see that the examples there, the proposal and contract content types are extensions of the sales content type. And the sales content type is an extension of the document content type. And just like I mentioned, changes made in the sales content type will be pushed down to the proposal and contract content types, but it won't be pushed back up to document. So just something to keep in mind when you're using these different things there. So a little bit more about that. So changes made in parent content types are pushed to children. So anything that you do to sales is going to be available for proposal and contract. But changes made in the child are not pushed to the parent. So if I make a change to sales or proposal, it's not going to go back up here to document. Changes made in parent content types can override customizations made in child content types. So for example, if I have document in sales, so if I do something in sales, I create proposal, and then I do something there, but then I go back to sales and I make a change to sales, it might possibly override what I've done in proposal depending on what the change was, because it's always looking back to its parent to kind of get the base outline of features and columns, that kind of thing. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're creating these. All right, so a little bit more about content types. They can be created at different levels, and they can be managed at different levels. So they can be created at the site level. Let's say you have an HR site that needs separate content types that don't apply anywhere else. So you could write on your HR site, which is, let's say it's a subsite of your site collection. You want to go ahead, you can create content types right there, and then those content types are only available for that HR site. This is something, the reason a lot of people have asked me, well, why would I ever want to do that? Why wouldn't I just create everything on the top site collection level? It's because you want to consider permissions. So let's say if you had somebody who was an HR analyst or something, and so they had full control to that HR site. They could, mess with permissions. They could, do add and remove apps. They could, create content types, all that kind of stuff. They had that permission on that HR site, but they did not have the permission on the top level because you wouldn't want them messing with the entire site collection. You only want them to be able to do those things on the HR level. So that would be a good example of why you would want to create those on the site level, because you want to give somebody access to create content types and to create site columns and manage that kind of stuff without having access to do it across the entire site collection. So just something to think about. Now on the site collection level, You can do content types for the entire site collection and all its subsites. So let's say if I created some content types on the site collection level, they would be available in that HR site. So they would kind of, just similar to how the content types work with the parent-child relationship, it's similar. So I create things on the site collection level, they're available on the site level, but if I create something on the site level, it's not going to go back and mess with the site collection level, if that makes sense. And then finally, one of the things I use the most probably when I'm dealing with a new environment, a new SharePoint environment, is a content type hub. And I think this is really key if you plan to have multiple site collections. So let's say if you're going to have site collections for different purposes, or even if you're going to have different multiple web apps. So let's say you're thinking of an extranet versus intranet situation. So you want to have both an extranet and an intranet. What I would suggest is a content type hub. Basically, this is you create a site collection from within Central Admin, and you mark it as a content type hub. There's a couple steps for doing that, but that's kind of the basic idea with that. And then what happens is all of your site collections and your web apps can point to that content type hub and pull the content types from that. And it's the same with the managed metadata. You can manage it there as well. And then all those things will go down into the site collection, all the web apps into the site collections, and then you'll be able to use those content types everywhere. So that way, like, let's say if you had something like a department list, something that you're going to be using globally, a client list, a department list, or something like that, and you wanted to have that, that's specific for site columns. If you wanted to have that available everywhere, then you create a content type hub, have specific content types and specific site columns that you can use. So just something to think about when you're planning this stuff. All right, so let's go ahead and let's talk about manage, and I'm actually going to do some demo here where we can take a look at how to create content types. So creating content types, it's very similar if you're doing this. We were just talking about the different levels there. So if you're doing this on the site collection, or in the content type hub, creating them is very similar. You're going to access site settings, go to site content types or content types, whatever it says, and then hit create. You can provide a name. You're going to choose the parent content type, which remember is pretty important. So we're going to talk through that in a minute. And the group that you want it to be stored in. So the group that you want to keep this content type in. You can create, I would suggest creating new groups to better organize your content types. So you want to think through, all right, I'm going to have content types for this purpose and just general content types, and we have content types for this purpose, document content types or something like that. You can go ahead and create new groups to kind of better organize that information. So let's go ahead and let's just take a quick look at creating one. And then we'll talk through some of the additional features. Where's my site? There it is. So as I mentioned, to create one, I'm going to go to my site settings, which is right here under my site actions gear. And I'm going to go to site content types. Now, like I said, it could say content types or site content types depending on what you're looking at. So I'm going to click on that. These are all the content types that are out of the box. Actually, if you look close, you'll see that I have a few custom ones in here. But for the most part, these are the content types that are out of the box. So you'll see a lot of those common things like under document content types, which is a group here. We have document, we have form, we have master page, which is for branding purposes. We even have things like web part pages and wiki pages. So those are also considered content types. If I scroll down even more under list content types, I have those common things like announcement, contact, event, item, and that kind of thing, task, etc. So one of the things, like I mentioned, is one of the important things when you're creating a new content type is you want to think through who should be the parent. So if you're creating something that's like, let's say it's going to be, you want to create a document template or a document content type, then the parent is going to be under your document content types, and it'll be document. If you're creating a custom page with custom site columns that relate to the page, then you could choose one of the page options here as the parent. If I'm creating something like for a list, let's say if I have a custom list and I'm creating, one of the examples I'll show you a little bit later is a purchase order. So I'm creating something that's a purchase order and I need to have custom columns related to that, then I could create that as a list content type with the item as the parent. So there's a couple of different options. There's things you want to think of. Anytime you want to extend something, so let's say if I want to have a event content type that just has some specific things related to my site. So I wouldn't want to change the event parent here because this is a core piece of SharePoint. I'm just going to take that event content type, make it my parent, and then I get all the stuff that comes with the event content type, but then I can add additional things to it, like a department column or something similar. And then that can apply across my entire site collection. So let's go ahead and create. And I am going to create just a regular document here. So I'm going to call this IT document. And I'm going to choose this as my parent. I'm going to go to document content types and then choose document as my parent. So what this is going to be is because I want to be able to easily identify all my department's documents. So I'm going to create, I'm not going to do this here, but I'm just to give you an example, I would create like an HR document, IT document, finance document, and then whenever they load those documents, they can choose that content type, and then I could, potentially make search a little bit easier, roll those up somehow. I could do different things with that. And then under the group here, you could do a couple different things. You could put it into just the custom content types, which is just a default group that SharePoint gives you. Or you could create a new group. So I'm going to call this new group department. Oops, it'd help if I could type department documents. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So that went ahead and that created my IT document content type. And it gives me the name and title just like the regular documents would have. It gives me that name and title, those name and title columns. And now I have all these additional features here, and I can add even more columns if I want to. Let's go back to the PowerPoint before we do that. So creating content types. So some things to know. Default columns will depend on the parent content type, just like I mentioned. When I use the document parent, I got title and name, so that those things pulled in automatically. Columns can be added from existing or new site columns. So you can either create
we have a question, sorry.
Okay, that's all right.
If you have a hub in one collection, are you limited to only using site columns from that hub collection with the content type?
Let me read that again.
Oh, go ahead and mark it.
Yeah, select it.
Select.
All right, if you have a hub in one, are you limited to only using site columns from that hub? I'm going to try to, I'm not sure exactly what you're asking, but I'm going to try to figure it out. So I think you're asking me is if you have a content type hub that you're using, are you limited to only using that from, for every single site collection? And the answer is no. Anytime you're using a content type hub in an individual site collection, you can say, I don't want to use the content type hub. And then that way in that site collection, you can manage it just directly in there. I think if that's what you're asking. And then as far as site columns are concerned, no, you can add additional site columns as well even if you're using a content type hub. So hopefully that answers that. All right, creating content types. So columns can be added from existing or new site columns. Site columns are a great choice for any column that needs to be reused. Examples include departments, client lists, etc. Typically, what we do a lot is we will create some of this stuff as managed metadata, because managed metadata has its own. There's a whole nother. If you guys look back in our Power Hours, there's a whole nother presentation just on managed metadata. Managed metadata kind of is its own thing, but what we typically will do is to create a managed metadata term set, and then create that as a site column. So then that way it's easily reused in multiple content types or just throughout the site. So when you create a site column, so one site column can be added to multiple content types. So you only have to create it once, and then you can reuse it over and over again. Columns can be required, so you can actually have a column be required. It can be optional or even just hidden. So maybe you want it to have something there, but you don't want it to appear in a form. You can go ahead and you can hide it. Use the column order to determine how the columns are going to show on the new and edit forms for a document or item. So you actually have that column order button, which you would have in a list or library if you're just doing things in there as well. But it just kind of lets you order the things and how they show up. So just some stuff to know. So creating content types, we're going to go through some of these in a minute. So content type settings include advanced settings, workflow settings, information management policy settings, and then finally the document information panel settings, which is for documents only. Advanced settings, so you can set a content type to be read-only at any time. So if you want nobody to change it, you can set it to be read-only. You can update all content types inheriting from this content type. So if you want to make sure that any updates you make get pushed automatically, you can do that. Workflows, you can attach any out-of-the-box workflows to the content type, or you can actually create a reusable SharePoint Designer workflow and attach it to a content type. So you can do the out-of-the-box ones are like your approval workflows and some of those things that I think one is like the signature, where you can get signatures. That's a couple of those out-of-the-box workflows. So you can attach those at any time, or you can go into SharePoint Designer, create a reusable workflow instead of a list workflow, and then attach it to the content type as well. And then that workflow will be available anywhere the content type is used without having to go through and add it every time. And I'm going to show you some of these in just a moment. Information management policies, so these are really great. You can do these on a couple of different levels. So these can also be created on the actual site collection level, so they can be site collection wide, or on the document library level. So you have a few options there. For the content type, you have retention, auditing, barcodes, and labels. So for retention, an example of that would be if you want to kick off a workflow or move a document when a date field reaches a certain age. So let's say if the modified date is this many years old or this many months old, you want to automatically move the document somewhere else or delete the document or kick a workflow off. You can do that with the retention stages. Multiple retention stages can be created. So let's say if you wanted to kick off a workflow and delete the document, you could do both of those things by using the information management policies. Auditing, you can audit the opening, editing, moving, or deleting of items and documents. So I'll show you that. Barcodes, if you're using a barcode system, this is where you could turn that on, assign a barcode to each document or item, and then you can even make sure that the users are prompted to include the barcode before they submit the item. So you can even have it prompt them if needed. Labels, you can create right from within the information management policy. You can create a custom label that gets included on documents or items of your content type. So you can do that right from there as well. So we're going to show you that in just a moment. So then document information panel. This is the panel that allows users to add document metadata right from an Office application. So for example, Microsoft Word. Custom panels can be created and applied. You'll see in a little while you're going to see the out-of-the-box panel that we're using. But you can, if you had a developer or someone to work with, you could create a custom panel and apply that as well. Determine whether to always show the document information panel or the DIP on document open and initial save. So there's a checkbox in there that you can mark if you want it to always show when the person opens the document and saves the document for the first time. All right, and I think that's it for that. So let's go take a look at some of those things I just kind of talked through. So I have my IT document that I've created. So we talked a little bit about columns. If I wanted to add a column here, I can do add from existing. I can go to my existing site columns. So a lot of these are going to be just the out-of-the-box site columns. So I'm going to give it a second. My site's taking a minute to think. So here I have a bunch of different groups I can scroll through. You can see things like author, birthday, a lot of like your contact stuff, contact photo. So you can scroll through this if you have things like email or like there's an event address here. There's a bunch of different site columns that I've created or that are out of the box. So think through what you need, and then you could add those things directly from here. So I'm just going to add, let's see if I have a department one already. If not, then I'll just create it. Yeah, so I have a department, so I'm going to add department. Here, I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So that adds department. And then I'm going to go ahead and add from existing site columns. I've done that, so I'm going to add from a new site column. So I'm going to create a new one now. And I'm just going to call this asset number. I'm just making stuff up as I go along. Make that a number column. And I could choose, just like with the content type, I can choose what group to put this new site column into. So I'm just going to leave it at custom for now. And then just like if you're adding a column to a list or library, I have all these features and options here. I can go ahead and click OK when I'm done. So then now I have those two new columns that I've added to IT document. So this won't mess with the regular document that we use everywhere throughout the site. This is just a new IT document content type that has these columns automatically associated with it. So I can have that. And then here's column order, like I mentioned. You can order the way that they'll display on the new edited forms. Under advanced settings, I mentioned that earlier. For documents, you can load a document template. I'm going to show you how that kind of works in a little while. So you can load it right from your computer, or you can point to a template that's sitting somewhere in SharePoint. You can do either of those things there. And then basically what that is whenever they click New, it opens the template, they can fill it out, and then save it back to the library. Read-only, so you can mark a content type as read-only at any point. If you want to go ahead and push a content type update, so you make a change here and you want to push it to all the libraries and lists and libraries that are using it, you can go ahead and say yes, and it will push that there. So we have advanced settings, workflow settings, like we mentioned with this one. You can add a workflow. So you add a workflow here. These are all the out-of-the-box workflows that SharePoint provides. So you can add any of these and give it a name and a task list and all the start options and all of that stuff. Or if I was to go into SharePoint Designer and create a reusable workflow and save it inside of save and publish it from SharePoint Designer, then I would see that reusable workflow here in this drop-down list, and I could add that. So I could, not just the out-of-the-box stuff I can add to content types, but I can add any of my own custom workflows as well. And then once it's added and configured, then it's available anytime this IT document is used throughout the site. There's the delete option for here. Information management policies, we kind of talked through this just to show you. You could give it a description and a policy statement. And then here's where you actually have retention, auditing, barcodes, and labels. So retention, I'm going to enable this. And I can add a retention stage, and you can even go between non-records and records if you're using Record Center. So I'm going to do an add a retention stage. And then here, this is where I can say the time period and then the action. So I can say after this time period, the created date plus how many years, months, or days. And then I can say I want to move it to the recycle bin, permanently delete, transfer it to another location, start a workflow, declare a record, delete previous drafts, delete all previous versions. So I can kind of go in here and keep, you know, my wherever I'm using this content type, I can keep it pretty clean.
There are a couple more questions in there.
Sure, go ahead. Let's take a look.
Recommend leaving allow management content types on or off within the list or library.
I'll select that. It just depends on what you're doing. I think that's Eric that's asking that.
Yeah.
It's actually saying selecting question. There it goes. I think it just depends on what you're doing. If it's just going to be a regular document library, you're not really using content type, you don't really need a content type with it, then you would just leave it off. But if you need to add a content type, then you're going to have to allow it in order to add those. So it just depends on whether or not you need to use a content type with that library, list or library. All right.
There's another one. It's very much longer. I'll let you read it from Stacy.
Okay. Let me mark done and then select. All right, Stacy, before I understood how content types worked, I would create multiple forms with fields for name, email, etc., and then save the form as a content type. Now I have all kinds of duplicate name and email, etc. site columns in my gallery. How can you clean it up? I'm not sure. What you would probably have to do, and maybe Laura has a better idea, but you'd probably have to do is you'd probably have to create your whatever ones that you want to use for everything, right? So you'd create if you already have a couple that you use regularly, you could go ahead and make sure that they get added to all of your content types that you're using, and then go through and then delete the site columns that you no longer use. So you can go into the content type and add and remove columns right from the content type, and then clean that up there. And then you could go in and delete the actual site columns. But I definitely wouldn't go through and delete the site columns until you know that you've put something in the content type that you won't be deleting.
Yeah, that's a hairy one because you see that happen a lot because then they're all grayed out and you can't delete them because they're the form, and then so there's a little download I think it's on Codeplex called SharePoint Manager, and I've used that before on the server. You have to go on the server and then you have to drill down into your list or library and change, like there's like a little switch that says like hidden or something like that on each field. Change it so that it's editable. It's like editable or read only or something like that. You uncheck read only, and then it lets you delete it from in there. I've only had to do that once or twice, but to keep it from happening again, like if you have your form you posted to a library and you want to change one field to something else, go through the publishing wizard and remove it cleanly, and then finish the publishing wizard, and then go through the publishing wizard again and add it as whatever the other thing is, instead of like, because if you change them sort of as the form's live, it will just orphan them like that. So.
Oh yeah, definitely with InfoPath.
It's kind of messy. It's not. There isn't a pretty picture around that.
Yeah. All right. All right. So back to retention stages. So we went through some of the actions you can do there. So I can go ahead and then I can set a recurrence on that once I get that set up, and then click OK. And I can continue to add, as I mentioned, you can add more stages, so you can add additional things if you wanted one to do a workflow, one to delete. You could go ahead and set those up as well. So then we also have auditing. This is pretty easy to turn on. This is just going to send this information to the audit reports on your site. So you can audit for things like opening or downloading, editing, checking in or checking out, moving or copying, and deleting. So you just mark whatever ones you want to audit. I think a common one I see is definitely the deleting and editing. So you can mark those, and then you can get a report in your site collection admin settings. You can get in and get a report of those things there. Enabling barcodes, so you basically just turn this on and then prompt users to insert a barcode before saving or printing, so you can turn that on as well. And then we have labels. This is where you can actually create a custom label. So if I scroll down here, you'll kind of see where you can go in. You can choose font size, style, and then you actually have, I'm using Firefox, so it's probably not going to show up correctly, but you have the preview down here of your label, so you can kind of decide how it would show. And you can see here the examples. It's actually showing you how you can use column names as well if you need to in your label. And then you can also prompt users to insert the label and prevent changes to label after they are added. So you can do those things as well. So that's all available on your content type. And then we have the document information panel, which you'll see shortly. And this is where you can use the default template or put in a custom document information panel if there's one created, and then determine whether or not to always show it when the document's opened and initially saved for the first time. You can mark that as well. I think that's it for the settings here. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to talk next through using content types, so how we use them. I think somebody mentioned one of the options that we do to kind of start off. So from list or library settings page, you need to enable the use of content types for the list or library under advanced settings. Once enabled, a new section is added to the list library settings called content types. And then content types can be added and then set as the default content type for that list or library. So we're going to kind of go through that now so we can see that. So I've added this IT document here. I'm going to go to my home page, and I want to add this IT document as an option for my document library. So I'm going to go to Documents, Library, Library Settings, and then Advanced Settings. And under Advanced Settings, I'm under Content Types, Allow Management of Content Types. This is that question that I think Eric asked about earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and flip this to Yes, and then go down and click OK. And then I can go ahead and I can add from existing site content types. And then once I do that, I can change the new button order. So I'm going to go ahead and add from existing. And I put mine in a department documents group. So I can easily find it. IT document, adding it, clicking OK. So now that's added. So now if a user was to come in, they would see both of these options. If I wanted to only show IT document from now on, I wanted everything to fall under IT document, I can do change new button order. And I can just, for document, I can just make it, uncheck it so it's no longer visible. I'm actually going to leave it for now because I want to show you what this looks like when I upload a document. But as you can see, you can mark that there, and then I can even switch the position. So if I want IT document to be number 1 above document, I can do that. Click OK. So then once I do that, it's now the default document content type. So I can go ahead and let's add a document and just kind of see what this looks like. So I'm going to go back to my document library and add a new document. And let me go find one really quickly. I move my demo documents around all the time, so it takes me a second sometimes. There we go. All right, and then I'm going to click OK. And now what happens is because I have 2 content types, I now have this drop down here. So it's defaulting to IT document because I put that first, but I can always switch this and use a different one if I wanted to. So now this document automatically has a content type of IT document. I can fill in the additional columns for that, so department and asset number. So if I want to say IT and then the asset number is 1234, I can go ahead and click Save. So now that content, then that document's added, it has those columns, and now if I wanted to, I could always roll up that content type and search for that content type easily and find all the IT documents. So that's just a really quick and easy way of using that. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at 2 other options. So the first thing I want to look at is another document content type. So this is called release forms. Now with release forms, I'm not actually going to be uploading documents, completed documents, into this library. I'm going to be creating them from scratch right from here. So whenever users need to add a new release form, they're going to do it right from this document library here. So what I've done with this, let me show you this site content type. It's under Wayland down here. So release form is a new one I've created. It's a document parent. I've added some columns here, so you can see release name, employee code, count, release date. And then under my document information panel settings, I've turned that on and had it show the dip whenever something's opened or saved initially. And then what I've done is under advanced settings is I have created a template that has some text and some options in there. I've created a template, and I'm pointing this document content type to that template there. Go ahead and click OK, and let's take a look at how this works. So when a user comes in and they want to create a new release form, they're going to go to File, New, and then Release Form. And it's going to prompt me twice to log in. That just kind of depends on your browser settings. Oops. Come on, let me log in. Sometimes let's see if that works. There we go. There we go. Okay, I'm going to drag this over so you can actually see it. Oops, hold on one second. There it goes. So I logged in. It opens this up here. This is my release form. And then across the top, this is the document information panel. So this is showing me the title, release name, employee code, count, release date. Those are the columns that I had added here. And in addition to just showing me this, what I've done is I've used quick parts in Word. If you go to Insert, you'll see quick parts here. I've used quick parts in Word to go ahead and place those items inside my document. So when my users fill out the document information panel, so they're saying they're saving this for the first time, so they're going to call this, we're just going to say Jane Smith, make up a code here, say that, and we'll put in a date of Friday. And so then they fill this out, and you'll notice that down here in my document, it's actually filling those things in for me. So I've gone ahead and I put those in, and it's filling those things for me. And that's just.
Man, I was going to do a whole other power hour about quick parts. I don't know if I could fill up a whole hour on that, but I was planning on doing that.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
So you can.
They're so cool though, and nobody knows about them.
Yeah. They're just basically under Insert and Word under Quick Parts, and because I'm using the dip, if I do document property, it's going to show things like the content types or the site columns, sorry, that I've added to this content type, and I just insert those down there. And then I'm going to save this. I'm going to click Save, and then it automatically, my current folder is the Release Forms library, so I'm just going to click on that. And then I can name it, so I can go ahead and give this a name here. So I'm going to just call this Release Form 3. And then save it. It's saving everything back to SharePoint for me. So that's done. I can click X and refresh. And then now my Release Form 3, and then you can see there's the site columns that are now populated with that information. And now if somebody was to come in and they wanted to look at this form, I'm just going to do read only. Put that information in again. So now they came in, if they looked at the form, you'll see that it's populated with that information without the user actually having to go in and touch the formatting of the document. So it's kind of a neat way you can do that. So I've done that all with a content type. So what I did is I created a template. I loaded that template to my release form content type. I've added that content type to this library, and now my users can come in here and use this. We also have, I wanted to point this one out really quick. It's pretty simple. This is a custom list called purchases that I've added the purchase order content type to. So if I go to list settings here, we'll see we have purchase order. And I've removed items so that they can really only use the purchase order option. And now what I've done here, if they click new item, then they see my purchase order information automatically. So we have order number, buyer name, buyer address, shipping method, count, purchase total. And I could use that content type and roll that up somehow if I wanted to. So just another option of what you can do with content types there. So let's go back to using content types. So in addition to just using them in a library or list, you can use them in different areas, especially with search features. So utilizing content types, site columns, and managed metadata can make customizing your search features much simpler. Content types can be used with content query web parts, which are something that has existed, I think, since, is it 2007 maybe? Maybe 2010, I can't remember where it started, where the CQWP came into play.
Yeah, I think it was 2007.
Yeah, I thought so. All right, so you can use it with that. You can use it with content search web parts, which I'm going to show you, or even the search results web part, which is another option. So you can easily, if you create content types and you plan for things, you can easily create search roll-ups and different things to utilize those. Site columns, if you're using site columns, they can be easily used as refiners, so you can use them as search refiners, even on your, whether it's your default search page or just a custom kind of roll-up page. If you want to get the most out of search, at the very least, you should plan for content types and site columns. And it's something that you wouldn't think about because you're thinking, okay, I'm setting my search up, I'm making sure the server's working, making sure the crawl is happening. But one of the things that kind of goes into that, especially with the newest version of SharePoint, is planning things like content types, site columns, managed metadata, all that stuff that rolls under what we consider information architecture. You're seeing a screenshot here. I've done a demo on how I created this form roll-up. I think it was a couple of sessions ago. But I just want to point out again, just specifically around content types, I wanted to point out how we're using that, how content types with that roll-up. In case you missed that last session, just to kind of bring it all together. So I'm going to go to another site here. So with this site, I created a content type called Wayland Forms. And I added that on all my different sub-sites for the departments, excuse me, I've added Wayland Forms to all the libraries, the form library. So anytime they load a form, they tie it to the content type of Wayland Form. And then what we're doing here is we're rolling that up. So I'm just going to edit this and show you how easily you can do that. This is a content search web part. Content search web parts have query builders. So I'm going to click on Change Query here. And then this is how easy it is. Under your basic query builder, you can select a query, and one of the things you can select is items matching a content type. So you can click on that, and then you just come down here and restrict by content type. You just scroll through the list and find your content type, choose that, and click OK. And then right there, you're rolling up, and then obviously you can choose the app here, current site collection, or if you don't want to restrict, you want to pull from across your entire farm, you can do that. But you can restrict that, and then you can click OK, and what's happening there is it's going to roll up everything that has Wayland Forms tied to it. So you're easily being able to identify the things that organize and classify and identify the things that you want to roll up. So, like for example, if you think about it, if you didn't use a content type, and you just let all your users go in and load forms, and they just put it under the regular, everything was under document, it would be a lot harder. There would definitely be ways to do it, because we've done it, we've worked with all kinds of situations. There'd definitely be ways to do it, but it would take a little bit more time and effort to roll up forms than this has taken me. So you see this took me a couple of minutes, whereas doing that would probably take some, adding some things and kind of trying to figure out how you'd roll up just the forms. So using content types to classify things is really going to help you with a lot of these different search features and things that are new to 2013. And like I said, you can use it with the content query web part as well. So it makes using that, even in 2007 and 2010, a lot easier. All right. Well, I think that brings me to the end of my session here. So for the chat, any examples of using content types that you'd like to share? So just any ways that you guys use content types. We'd love to hear that. We always like to hear how people have kind of understood and applied those things to their SharePoint environments. And we'll give a couple of seconds for people to get that typed in if they're interested in answering that. What about you, Laura, Tavis? Do you guys have any interesting content type stories?
Yeah, well, I have that one that I wrote a blog post about a long time ago, SharePoint 2007, the one about the the case management process.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
That was so cool because that was like right when I discovered what you could really do with, showing and hiding fields and stuff like that with using content types, like especially for situations where you don't have the option to customize the forms or use InfoPath or whatever. And so that's especially relevant now in 2013 since we don't have the ability to use Design View anymore and InfoPath anyway. So, yeah. It's called Using Content Types as Statuses, that blog post I wrote. Tim says we use content types to help with our document center metadata. Great, Tim. That's good to hear about that. Good to know.
Very cool. I'm going to actually unshare my screen now. Just.
We can, I guess, if anybody else have any questions about content types or about any of those demos? And in the meantime, while we're asking for questions to come in, I can go ahead and see what Kessie is referring to. Kessie, I saw that screencast. I didn't look at the whole, I didn't watch the whole thing, but having to do with joins with data view web parts. What's your question? Wish we could let them ask questions like out loud. Well,
yeah, that would be good.
I'll just let her type her question, and then anybody else who has a question. And then in the meantime, that HR onboarding thing that I've been doing, it's got like 3 parts so far. I'm on vacation next week at the beach, but I'm going to go ahead and we're going to do Power Hour anyway, and I'm going to go ahead and do part 4 of that one, and continue on with it, and everybody on my family at the beach can just leave me alone for a few minutes for me to do that. So,
that is commitment right there.
Let's see.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I guess. I'm a big nerd. Kessie says, are there any bad practices we should avoid using content types?
Bad practices? That's a good question.
Well, not documenting, I guess, would be a bad practice because you don't, out of the box, you don't know where any given content type is being used, and you'd have to use a third-party tool to be able to tell. So if you could keep that all documented, then you don't have to buy a third-party tool.
And just planning, because I mean, if you're just going in there and you have a couple of different people that are admins and they're just adding things, like I think somebody brought up the whole site column thing, the issue of having multiple site columns that do the same thing. So just people going in there and adding things like without really having any idea of what's in there already. So there's definitely, planning is the big piece of that. You would think that, oh, well, it's a simple thing, I don't really need to plan it. But no, you really do. You need to have it documented and kind of laid out, mapped out first.
Yeah, and if you go get a better job and someone takes over your role, you want them to know what the heck's going on.
Exactly. And one of the things I'd actually recommend, not a good practice, and this is kind of just a quick thing, is I would recommend if you are going to deal with an intranet situation, you're going to have multiple departments, I would create a document content type for every department. That's one thing I've seen. I've done that before, and I've seen that really help. People don't think it's a big deal, but then once they start getting into search and stuff like that, they realize that that's really needed. So just something to think about.
Okay. Tim says the term store is our friend. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Cool.
Term store is
nice.
Term store is my best friend. It's the store I would say, like, if I had a credit card for the term store, it would not be good. No, I'm just kidding.
Carlos says, do you need to consider permissions on a content hub when used across the site collection? Ooh, that's a good one.
Do you need to consider permissions on a content type hub?
Like, would you lock down that whole site collection to only a couple of people?
Yeah.
And does it affect content types going across to other site collections? I guess it wouldn't affect them.
It doesn't, but it would. You would lock it down for who can edit it. Yeah, who can get into that site collection and edit it.
Okay. Joelle, love the DW TARDIS door.
Oh, yeah. Thanks.
Cool. Okay, so here's Kessie's question about the DW web part. Trying to add information from the VM list, but the lookup in... Oh, wait. Oh, sorry. I was reading them backwards. I have two lists, client list and VM list. The client list looks up the VM name. It's stored on their joined. Create the data view and adding clients to it. Trying to add information from the VM list, but the lookup and the client list has ID, blah, blah, blah. VM name, and the VM list is just VM name, so I'm not sure how to match those up. I would, so it is a lookup field, right? So this sounds familiar. So it's a lookup field. I've seen maybe the lookup field has to have, with a lookup field, can you additionally pull across the ID field? Like, when you do a lookup, it gives you checkboxes to add other fields that you're pulling over. If you check the box next to the ID field, then it'll also pull over the ID. Or in this case, like VM name, like you just want to have a column in each list that has the exact same value in it. So if you have a lookup and you pull over additionally the ID field from the list you're looking up from, and she's doing a join, she's trying to do a join view in a data view web part, then the ID is going to be, of course, the ID in the original list, and then the ID lookup field that it pulls over will match that ID in the other list, and then that's the field you can use for your join. Does that help? So I'll just let Kessie let me know if that helps or not. And then she also says, is there any way to get rid of title in the new content type? First you make it not required, and then you go and turn on manage content types, and then you go click the name of the content type in your list settings, and then just change it to hidden. And then find that field and change it to hidden. So you can't get rid of title, but you can hide it. Okay, hopefully we answered all those questions well, and I guess that wraps it up. Well, I'll just keep talking and see if anybody has any more questions, or if Kessie says if that helped or not. So the 21st, June 21st, we're going to have SharePoint Saturday Atlanta is going on at the same time that SharePoint Saturday Baton Rouge is going on. Joelle's going to Atlanta, I'm going to Baton Rouge, and it's unfortunate that they're the same day, because they're both like the ones that are in driving distance of me that I can go to because I'm in Birmingham. But I'll be speaking at Baton Rouge. I'm excited about that. And
what are you speaking about?
Oh, I don't know.
Yet to be determined.
One session about web parts and one session about workflows.
Cool.
Yeah. Oh, let's see. Ooh, we've got a couple more. She says it's a filtered lookup. Haven't seen options to what in SharePoint 2010 when you're creating a lookup field. This isn't applicable in 2007, but in SharePoint 2010 when you're creating a lookup field, you in the list settings when you're on the lookup field itself and you're editing it or creating it, it has you pick which field you want it to look up to, and it gives you a bunch of checkboxes next to a bunch of other columns to bring over along with that lookup field. So that's what I'm referring to. If it's 2007, you might have to do something funky with some sort of substring function in there to make it like only find like the part, like the ID, which is, or the part of the name which is like after the pound sign or whatever, to match up with your other name. But yeah, a substring function is what you might have to do to make something match up if you don't have 2010 to be able to do that. But I don't know exactly what you would type in your substring. I don't remember. It's been a really long time. So yeah, she said it is a lookup field. Hopefully it's 2010. And then Andrew says, would content types in our metadata be a way to recreate a lookup list that included department abbreviation, department manager, has multiple site collections now, so one single lookup list with an info will no longer work.
Yes. Create those as managed metadata term stores and then make site columns out of them, and then it will save yourself a lot of time and energy. Because then what you do is you just go right to the managed metadata term store and you update them, make changes to them, and then that's it. Works for everywhere. It applies to everything that you're using it with. So.
What? So if it's multiple fields, though, how does that work with?
Oh, because is he saying it's like
a lookup list?
What do they call that? The ones that we've done in InfoPath before. You can. There's way like where you choose one thing and then it automatically filters down to the other things. Is that what he's saying?
Like I think he's saying he wants to use a common department field across like lots of different site like as a lookup across a lot of different site collections. I guess you'd have to add it as long as you put it in a content type that's in the content type hub. Then and it's a lookup field.
Yeah.
I guess would the list have to be in the content type hub for it to look up to it? How would that work? Like the list of departments, would that have to be in the content type hub for you to create a lookup field as part of a content type? In the content type hub?
I think so, yeah.
So theoretically, Andrew,
yeah.
in your site collection that is the content type hub, create a site column create the list of all your departments and all managers and everything, and then create a site column that's a lookup to that list. And then put that site column in the content type, and then the content type will go out to all the site collections, theoretically. And then we would have that list. We'll have to try that and see. That sounds intriguing.
Yeah. Sounds like it would work, though. I think that's like that would be the best option.
All right. Well, can't think of anything else to announce. Can you guys think of any other events or anything?
Training. I'm training in San Antonio next week. So if you need a week long of power user training for SharePoint 2013, check us out. I think you have an online one coming up soon too.
Yeah, we teach like it's sharepoint.rackspace.com/training. We teach a power user class and an admin class. So just FYI. All right. Well, we will see you all next week when I'm at the beach, and Joelle will be there because she's teaching training, and we'll see if Steven's just completely busy all the time. They've always got him doing upgrades and installs like entire blocks of the day, so he hasn't been to one of these in a while. Anyway, all right. Well, we'll see everybody next week. Bye.
Bye, guys.